Today is a historic day. I want to begin by saying that we value and appreciate our peace officers for their selfless work that they do in our communities every single day to make us safe. The officers that put on the badge and uniform every day and do their jobs with honor and with respect to their profession. Just as you put on the badge and uniform every day for so many decades, Mr. Speaker. However, we also know that systemic racism exists along with the need for change across all of our institutions. And that includes law enforcement, Mr. Speaker. In many cases, bad policing is just a result of bad policy. And we have witnessed the evidence of unnecessary police violence and tactics that has produced negative outcomes predominantly for communities of color. Last summer, we all remember, we watched for 8 minutes and 46 seconds as an officer acted with impunity, his knee on the neck of brother George Floyd, choking him to death over an allegedly counterfeit $20 bill, a $20 bill. Here locally in Tacoma, we heard the words, "I can't breathe," from the lips of brother Manny Ellis, who was pinned to the ground while in custody and held under a neck restraint. We listened to hours of audio in the last moments in the life of Sister Breonna Taylor, gunned down while laying in her own bed, following a court-issued no-knock warrant to the wrong home. And last summer, Mr. Speaker, we saw thousands of our fellow community members, from elementary school students to great-grandmothers, all united in an incredible showing of solidarity following these deaths. Mr. Speaker, while Black and Brown communities have sounded this alarm for decades, there was finally a call from the majority to reform our system. I want to thank the organizers, the advocates, and the law enforcement that helped to craft this legislation. But most importantly, I want to acknowledge the countless families of loved ones who have died at the hands of police violence. You shared your stories with us, despite unimaginable pain and suffering. You helped us develop this bill. And while the policy details may be complex, the values behind this legislation can be distilled into a single sentence: that preserving and protecting human life must be the most fundamental value of our law enforcement. Today, some tactics used by law enforcement do not uphold that value. Furthermore, the different standards that we see across our state leads to confusion and also sows more distrust in the system. You know, Mr. Speaker, one of the many things I have learned in the last year in this position is that the legislative process can be slow, but we can make it work. We can make nuanced ideas become realities. And when talking about these ideas, we can bring everyone to the table. I am so proud and grateful for those who have stepped up to have these difficult conversations, to produce this legislation that fixes two problems: setting a baseline standard for acceptable police tactics in our state and equipment that can and should be used, banning or at least restricting harmful tactics based on the lived experiences of all Washingtonians. And this bill also helps us to begin the long and difficult process of rebuilding trust between law enforcement and communities of color. But together, Mr. Speaker, we can deliver on true public safety that is equitable and just, because justice is simply just us coming together to make policy that can have infinite impact. Mr. Speaker, please, I urge you, vote yes to help make our state safer. To finally say to these families and to the broader community, we hear you, we see you, and we will not idly stand by. Vote yes to say that we stand with you, not only in times of comfort and convenience, but in times of challenge and controversy. And finally, Mr. Speaker, vote yes to say loudly and clearly that unnecessary police violence must end. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.